Nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hey guys, welcome to day one of the Sarah Boone trial, also known as the SUITCASE trial. Right now, the hearing is on a lunch break, so we are going to catch up with the opening arguments, and we're going to go to that right now. Got to say, this lady, Sarah Boone, is a very strange, odd duck, that's for sure. And this is also a very strange case. I haven't actually watched the opening arguments, but it's hard to imagine they wouldn't play the video because she actually made a recording of the victim in the suitcase as he was losing his life. So it's hard to imagine you wouldn't have that as part of your opening argument. Let's see if we'll see that. Let's see if that'll be the case. Shall we jump slightly ahead? Well, there she is. For a while, she wanted to represent herself. Thankfully, that's not happening. So something I also want to bring up just with regard to the Delphi case, which also kicks off today. What is really interesting is how they've blacked off and cordoned off the entrance to the court. And if you ask me, they've learned, that court has taken lessons from another high-profile case, the Karen Reed trial, and they wanted to avoid the circus that plays out every day. Karen Reed walking into court and walking out of court, and having that being like a circus PR thing every single day for social media. Has that been good for the whole thing? I think we would say no. They've been trying to avoid that. Are we ready to get started?
Pertaining to anxiety and the lack thereof.
William J. for the state.
James Owens on behalf of Sarah Boone.
Tony Henderson, Sarah Boone.
Hi, Marin. Hi, M1. Good to see you here.
I do.
Ma'am, good morning. Can you please state your full name and date of birth for the record for me?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-7-7.
All right. Ms. Boone is seated at counsel's table, wearing a black suit and a pink blouse. She is in custody in this matter. However, there are no restraints that are affixed to her person. So we will be standing when our jury enters and exits. Before we bring in our jury this morning, yesterday the court had reserved on a Richardson hearing regarding Exhibit 2 as identified in the defendant's fifth amended reciprocal discovery exhibit list, specifically 119 pages of records from Advent Health Winter Park that were provided to the state yesterday morning by way of USB drive. Yesterday, the court had ordered that the defense was to provide an edited version of only the records pertaining to anxiety and the lack thereof, or anything pertaining to those matters, but before 9 a.m. this morning. Was that done, Mr. Owens?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. J, have you had the opportunity to review the culled down list of 119 documents?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is remaining of those 119 specific JPEG images, and what do they pertain to?
Billings, observations by the medical personnel on necessarily the issue of anxiety.
Chelsea, good to see you. Also good to see you, CEO of YouTube, and Jeffrey Coulomb. Good to see you. So far, the sound's not terribly encouraging.
Of those 119 images, how many are being sought? 15? Okay, thank you. State response.
Apparently, these are all just related to a January 23rd, 2018.
Should we jump ahead to the opening arguments? Let's see if we can get straight there.
Obtained sometime last week. He was unable to provide any specificity. He's going to confer with his office. Mr. Owens or Mr. Beck, are you?
I think it's premature and
I
problematic.
hope they got to
be
opening
doing
arguments.
that
I
at
mean,
this
I
time.
don't
It's
actually
not
know
the
if they did.
role.
And the reasonableness of those actions in light of their history.
I'm going to be really
Thank you.
disappointed if
Any
they
response,
haven't.
State?
It looks like this is it.
And then the defendant laughs.
Do you recall who?
So that is the 47-year-old Sarah Boone.
All right, members of our jury, good morning. I want to just confirm before we start this morning that you complied with the court's instructions last night to not have any conversations amongst yourselves or anyone else about the persons, places, things, or charge involved in this case. Then you have not conducted any independent investigation regarding those items. You just raise your hands to confer that you complied with the court's instructions. All right, the record will reflect that all jurors have raised their hands. Members of the jury, yesterday I told you that you may happen to see the lawyers in the courtroom or in the courthouse going about their affairs. And again, they're not trying to avoid you or speak to you because they're not allowed to. Did anyone happen to ride an elevator this morning with any of the attorneys, either for the state or for the defense? All right, juror in seat number 3 from my left, first row. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. Can you all approach for a moment?
So what's really
And a juror in seat 4, left to right, first row. Yes, sir. Who did you ride the elevator with? Do you recall who specifically, sir? Mr. Owens. Okay, thank you.
okay, so while they're dealing with that, what's quite interesting is there have been 2 cases of late that have involved there being video evidence really of the crime. In other words, the crime is essentially being recorded. This is one of them. Do you remember there was another case as well? And it's a case that I covered on this channel where instead of the incident being recorded, the full incident, you heard some of that incident.
All right, thank you both for your honesty. I appreciate that. It's something we.
Anyone know what I'm referring to here? What is the other case where there was also a recording of much of the incident? Remember Carly Gregg? And so that's in a real sense the holy grail of if you doing a criminal murder trial, having the entire incident recorded on video. And so the part that I find kind of crazy is what can the defense possibly come up with here? And that is what we're about to find out, certainly in the opening statements. Come on, jump. Okay, well, let's get back to the opening.
We talked about earlier this week. That's the one thing that we required and asked of you is just be open and honest. And I appreciate both of y'all's open and honesty. During the ride in the elevator, was there anything that you saw or observed that it would impacted you or influenced you in any way to have any impact on you? Juror number 3, left to right, first row. Juror number 4, left to right, first row. Okay, thank you. All right, with that, members of the jury, we're going to proceed with opening statements this morning. Both the state and the defense will have the opportunity to present them. I ask that you listen closely to those statements that they're going to provide. But remember, these are not evidence. This is just the party's belief as to what the facts and the evidence will show in this case. After the conclusion of the opening statements, we'll begin with the state's case in chief through witnesses. With that, Mr. J, you may proceed, sir.
Thank you.
And here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, what the evidence in this case is going to show you is that this defendant zipped 4 TCRS shot in the suitcase. He was able to do this because at the time of his death, he only weighed 103 pounds. She did this with the malicious intent of punish him. And then she went off to sleep and left him to take his final breaths on this earth alone. How many breaths those were, we don't know. The evidence is going to show that it was at least for about 15 minutes.
Does the audio ever improve, guys?
Herself took
This is
of this event. Evidence is going to show George Torres is dead because in this defendant's judgment, he deserved it. Now, a conscious disregard for whether he lived or died. We will see.
yeah. No, the sound is really low. I must say, it's so irritating that we're in the 21st century, and
From a
you have-
video that began
Oh,
at
there we go.
11:12 p.m.,
There we go.
45 seconds, on February 23rd, 2020, in Orange County, Florida, is a suitcase on the ground, face down, with the zippers facing the floor. You will hear Sarah, the defendant will say, "For everything you've done to me." Sarah, "For everything you've done to me." Sarah, "Fuck you." And then the defendant laughs. Sarah, "Fuck you." And the defendant laughs. Sarah, "Stupid." Sarah, "That's my name. Don't wear it out." Sarah, "I can't fucking breathe, baby. Seriously." "Yeah, that's what you do when you choke me." Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. The defendant laughs again. "Sarah, I can't breathe, babe." She laughs again. "That's on you." "Sarah, I can't breathe." She laughs again. Unintelligible words. And I would submit the evidence is going to show, because of the intoxication from alcohol, is the next thing she says. Sarah, 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 I can't breathe, baby. That's what I feel like when you cheat on me.
Okay.
Sarah, fuck you. I can't fucking breathe, Sarah. You should probably shut the fuck up. Sarah, shh, is the last thing you will hear the defendant say to Mr. Torres as he is face down, zipped shut in a suitcase. That, again, began at 11:12:45 and lasts just over 2 minutes. At 11:23 and 3 seconds p.m., there's a second 22-second video, and it's the defendant zooming in on the suitcase. And all you hear during this 22 seconds, after he's been in this suitcase since at least 11:12 p.m., is one more time, Sarah.
What a horrible way
How
to
did we
die.
get to this point where 103-pound George Torres
Seems like the sound is gone again.
Next morning, defendant wakes up.
Anyway, what that does show is, or doesn't it show, intentionality, vendetta, revenge, spite, all those things.
She goes downstairs.
So she was intoxicated. What impact does that have on everything?
See George anywhere, Torres. Eventually realizes, oh my God. The first thing she does after taking him out, and I believe you will hear a description by the defendant saying, took his little
What is going on with the audio?
At some point she makes that
Is it because he's not at the lectern?
tries to resuscitate him. Here's gurgling as she presses down on his chest, forcing whatever air was trapped in there out. The next thing she does is she will call 911.
I think I'm going to jump a little bit ahead to where the audio is okay, if you don't mind. Now we'll probably hear the audio.
What you will not hear are tears. You will not hear sorrow. You will hear a certain level of concern. My boyfriend and I were playing last night. Put him in a suitcase, and we were playing hide and seek kind of thing. I fell asleep. Found him dead in the suitcase this morning. I don't know what happened. He had blood coming out of his mouth. Don't know if it was an aneurysm. Pulled him out of the suitcase, tried to give him CPR. He was in the suitcase and I fell asleep. He's not awake, he's purple, he's not breathing. There's some instructions about how to do CPR given to her, asking about whether an AED is available to shock his heart. It's too late. He's cold, he's stiff, he's purple. We were playing hide and seek. We were playing hide and seek. This is horrible. This is horrific what happened. Like, what happened? We were playing hide and seek last night and I fell asleep.
You know what's also kind of interesting is, in a way, aren't there similarities between this case and Karen Reed, in the sense of you have a romantic partner who dies, the male, and during that incident, the female in that equation was intoxicated. And then you have some kind of narrative following that. Isn't that quite interesting?
So she mentions that there was blood coming out of his mouth. And his body.
There goes the audio again.
What the doctor found was expect suitcase, he passed from positional asphyxiation, meaning like you're not going to get full breaths when you're crumpled up like this.
Suppose Court TV had no idea that he was going to present in this way.
You have to have a plastic bag over your head.
And then at about 5:30 in the afternoon on February 23rd, again, there is another receipt for the same bottle of wine for the same price. And those two bottles of wine were recovered. They're going to be produced to you in evidence, and you will see that they are, in fact, Magnum bottles of wine. So that's the context that we're dealing with when we hear things like, we only had one bottle of wine, and we finished what was left in the bottle of wine from before. Well, ladies.
So I must say, one thing that I think you've got to think about and sort of wonder about is, how did he get into the suitcase to begin with? Do you think that he voluntarily climbed into the suitcase? Because the whole hide and seek scenario suggests that he was trying to hide away in the suitcase, right? If you reject the hide and seek scenario, then how did he end up in the suitcase? Wasn't it when he was unconscious, perhaps from being drunk, that she put him in the suitcase? Because I think that's quite an important question as well. How did the victim end up in the suitcase? So are her fingerprints on the suitcase? Are the fingerprints on the inside? And so on.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's two 1.5 liters that apparently were consumed by a 103-pound man and the defendant, who is in the same weight class. Plus, if you believe that the defendant and the decedent would leave leftover wine from any given day, any additional wine that was remaining from the 1.5 liters from Saturday. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a lot of wine. So in that context, we were just having wine, enjoying each other's company. At one point, we play hide and seek. She says she didn't zip it up all the way. There was enough room, in her words again, there was enough room for his little fingers to get out. We were still having a good time and whatever. And basically, Mr. Torres is stressing out about jobs, his ex-wife, about money. And so they're just doing puzzles and doing things to keep his mind off of it. Doing art, playing with the dogs, dancing with the dogs, playing hide and seek. We were always trying to outdo each other where we could find each other the best. When they started playing hide and seek, she went up to the shower and then got tired of hanging out in the shower and came down, and that's when she found him playing around in the suitcase. We both thought it was funny. I'm going to zip you up. 2 little fingers could stick out. And she went upstairs thinking, he'll get out, we're going to have sex and go to sleep and call it a day. It was a good day. She insists that they had wine, but we're not drunk. You will be able to assess that for yourselves when you hear the recording she made. No ill will between us last night. Last argument, maybe last week. Don't really argue. We came home, drink, smoke, did art, listened to music, play with the dogs. We drink what we can afford. We used to be able to afford liquor, but now we can only afford wine. And that's how that day ends with the police. She goes and sleeps
Oh, no.
at her ex-husband's house the night of February 24th. What they are doing, and by they I mean Orange County Sheriff's Office, in part, is going through her phone. That's when they discovered the 2 videos that I just described for you. And there's other things in the phone, which I will discuss with you in a little bit. But she's summoned in for another interview, and she sits down and gives another interview on February 25th, now Tuesday. She does describe past instances of violence. You're going to hear about that. She's going to say, Mr. Torres had hit her with a curtain rod about a month ago. Since then, though, like, we've been good. I've been good. She describes that he comes at her all the time. He comes at me. So it's either I flee or I try to go upstairs and go to sleep. That's usually what it is. I don't know if you talk to Brian, her husband, about any of that, but most of the time I flee and I go over there. There's a discussion about why she stays with him, and you'll hear that for yourself. She will say that she doesn't really want to drink. She just takes an occasional drink. She drinks to placate him, Mr. Torres. She says that you're going to see phone videos of Mr. Torres smashing her TV in the past, like a month earlier. You may see that too. But she doesn't get drunk. When she drinks, she likes being non-compos mentis, her words, not mine, having her wits about herself. Then she gets to the hide and seek again and describes that they've played it 3 times before.
Okay, so something else I'm intuiting here with his opening, and tell me if I'm wrong, is we are likely to see almost a Depp versus her type scenario where it's kind of like Darvo. It's like, he's not the victim here, I'm the victim. Even though he died, well, I've been mistreated and all that kind of thing. Aren't you kind of getting that impression that her defense is going to be that she's actually the victim in the story? He did this, he did this, he did that, he did that, right? Don't you get that idea?
But had never zipped one another shut in it before. And they were really just running out of places to hide because it's just a townhome. She does not remember, according to her, she does not remember taking any photos or videos of the night's events. At this point, they ask her, well, would you like to see it? And she says, I can't watch this. I flipped him over. I flipped him over, and that's where it was. Guys, this is killing me right now. That's why I flipped it over between the 2 videos. I didn't do anything intentional. Discussion over whether he had enough room to get any of his fingers out from the zipper. My intention was not to leave him there. We both got in there. Both of us were in there. When she went upstairs, my plan was not to, quote, he'll be up here any minute. My plan wasn't to leave him in the suitcase.
My plan.
Why is all this going on? It's the drinking. That's what it is. It's the drinking. I thought he was okay. Guys, that's how we were with each other. Nobody understands our relationship. This whole suitcase thing never happened before, though she described it happening before. I'll never drink alcohol again.
So another case where the suspect pledged never to drink alcohol again, I seem to remember was one of the suspects in the West Memphis 3 case. Does that ring a bell with any of you? Can you think of another case where a suspect said, I'm never going to drink alcohol again? I definitely think it was West Memphis 3 is comes to mind.
She insists that she has no injuries on her. And you don't have to take her word for it because they took photographs of her and there were no injuries on her.
That's a significant point because if her defense is self-defense, then you would imagine there would be injuries. And if she'd been mistreated in the run-up to everything, you would imagine there would be bruises, wounds of some kind. Not that that would justify what she was doing, but would certainly back up her argument or her defense. And it looks like she can't.
Insists over and over that there was no violence that day. It's like, okay, we're in a good place right now. Ask her about saying fuck you to Mr. Torres. Well, that's just being playful and having a good day. Everybody's having a good day. I didn't touch him, nor did he touch me. Her words.
I did not touch someone to get them into a suitcase or get them out.
What else is found on her phone? There's a conversation between Mr. Torres's brother, and again, nobody knows who's using these phones at the time text messages are sent in these records that you're going to see. But it's indicated that there's a communication between one of the decedent's brothers and the owner of the phone that was taken that belongs to Miss Boone. The text from the brother is, yo, my daughter told me what you did, Sarah. I don't want you around any of my daughters or nieces, nephews. And that's Christmas 2019, just under 2 months before this event. She replies, or the person using her device at this time, ugh, your quote-unquote dad hit me in the face. The next text is, hide and seek, I shall. January 13th, there's another heated discussion. She describes it on January 13th in a text to Mo, the brother again. It's a Torres thing. Boo. Sends a picture. Keep the fugly creep out too. It's still fugly. Lose. The brother responds, please do something with yourself, Sarah. God bless you. The defendant's response, and bless you and all of you too. I'll get, in all capitals, rid of him. Then it'll be, in all capitals, better. Ugh, Torres. Referring to Mr. Torres, getting rid of. That's the case.
That's the case. So what do you guys think of the presentation? Like, personally, I think it's far more effective reading a thread of texts, which they could have done in opening statements, than I mean, putting them on a screen and you seeing what the answer and the replies were compared to narrating them. In other words, show, don't tell. Do you agree with that? Anyway, let's see if we can hear this part of the audio.
That's what the evidence is going to show
I don't think.
about this subject matter.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, what I normally do is I ask you guys who did the better opening statement. Something tells me we're going to hear the defense a lot more clearly. Do you guys agree?
You may proceed, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Maybe not.
Appreciate y'all being here. I was introduced before. My name is James Owens. And I represent Sarah.
Wow, this is so frustrating. Do you think they don't care about it being live streamed? I suppose it is the lawyer's job to win the case, but do you think they don't really care? Okay, well, let's see if we can. That's the advantage of doing it delayed. You can kind of. Let's see what he's saying. There's no higher call to write all the way. No heart attack. There's a lot of money, and we're going to ask you and find Sarah Boone. I don't think I can pick it up. To defend yourself, I think it is like a self-defense defense.
Between Sarah Boone and George Torres.
There we go.
Sarah Boone and George Torres were down and out, as you can be. Their life centered around alcohol.
Mm.
Both of them suffered from, used to be called alcoholism, now it's called alcohol abuse syndrome. And so day to day, they struggle with the use of alcohol. You can imagine that. It affected their jobs. It affected keeping employment. It affected even getting a job. As codependent as you can be towards each other. And you're going to learn with all that was domestic violence. And that George Torres physically abused Sarah Boone. And she suffered from the effects, the psychological effects that one suffers from repeat violence from an intimate partner. They were together over 3 years, and there were several prior incidences of violence. We've got the photographs. There were incidences where police were called who took photographs. So you're going to be able to see the evidence. And we believe the court will instruct you at the end when you're considering self-defense, which we call justifiable use of non-deadly force or justifiable use of deadly force, that you can consider the prior acts, the history of violence, the prior difficulties that the parties had. And considering her set of circumstances that she was faced with in making the decision to use reasonable force under the circumstances.
Was that reasonable force?
And the most important thing I can tell you here today is keep an open mind. There's two sides to every story. You're going to hear the state's side. them attempting to paint her a certain way, as they've done here today in opening statement. And then you're going to hear another side. And you're going to have to weigh that. All the evidence, the credibility of the witnesses, the photographs, the videotapes, and come to a conclusion. Now let's talk about this day, February 23rd of 2020, the date of this event. This case has been pending for some time. Here we are, October of 2024. I think the evidence is going to show that they had purchased some wine the day before, but they hadn't finished all of that. So it was in the refrigerator. Many times that's how they start their day. At some point, you're going to see a video from Publix, from where they live. I believe it's Winter Park. But Publix was not too far from their apartment complex. And they took their car, they drove over there. So you're going to see a videotape from Publix of them both going in the store about noon, and they come out with one of those larger bottles of the wine. And then, of course, there's a receipt, and the bottles are in the garbage can. Of course, there obviously is an attraction between the two. And as everybody knows, couples can have great times where things click, everybody gets along, and then we can have episodes of disagreement. And how are those resolved? Really, that's what this is about. How are disagreements resolved? But George was very jealous of Sarah.
I do think, if you're making the argument that she was under duress, that she was fearful, that this was an urgent situation where she was frightened. The fact that she is swearing at him in a controlled voice, that he's saying, Sarah, please, Sarah. The fact that it's so muted doesn't sound like duress. It doesn't sound like someone is being threatened. It sounds like someone's doing what they want to do, doesn't it?
You're going to hear the testimony about that, and that he cannot, in certain situations, he can be very charming. But when his level of intoxication gets to a certain level, is when he gets sad, moody, and a lot of times eventually it involved forcible sex with Sarah Boone or actual physical violence against her. They bought the wine.
Another question is, does he threaten her while he's in the case? Does he say, if you don't open now, X, Y, Z? Or does she basically say to him, this is payback? I mean, who's in control in that situation?
It's a simple life. They don't have much money, but they both like art. They did that for a while. They both like puzzles. They did that for a while. Well, about 5 or so, the wine bottle was gone. And George had said, I want to go get some cigarettes. So there's a convenience store right close by their apartment complex. And Sarah thought he was just going to walk over there and get cigarettes and come back. But no, what he did was he got her keys, he got her debit card, and he went over to the Publix and he got another bottle. I think that was about 5:30, something like that. And again, there'll be the Publix video showing him going in, going out, and there'll be a receipt for the purchase of that bottle, and then they'll keep that bottle. Will be in the garbage can along with the other bottle. Well, when he comes in with the second bottle, Sarah knows this is not good. She knows this means he's going to get to another level of intoxication. So Sarah's concerned. So she attempts to placate him, keep him busy, keep him in a good mood. They drink that bottle, or she drinks as well. And at some point, they're intoxicated at a high level. As some people do when they're drunk, they get silly. And they decide to play a game of hide and seek. She goes upstairs, their bedroom's upstairs, to the shower and waits for a period of time.
In the history of hide and seek, in terms of your experience of it, have you ever hidden in a suitcase or hidden somebody else in a suitcase? Just in the history of hide and seek that you know about, has anyone ever hidden in a suitcase, and the suitcase is in plain sight? It's not like the suitcase is under a bed or somewhere else. Not only is the suitcase in plain sight, it is closed. It's not like you just hid in the suitcase is closed. A couple of you say yes, okay.
And he doesn't come to her. At some point, she gets cold, she gets tired. She wants to go see, well, maybe we got it mixed up. Where is he? So she goes downstairs, and they had gotten a suitcase down a week or so ago. It's an old suitcase that they were going to donate to Helping Hands or Goodwill or somebody, and they were putting some items in there. And it's a broken down suitcase. It's a large suitcase. They both weigh about 100 pounds. And they don't eat good. Malnourished to a large degree. But the pull handle is broken off.
Of the zipper.
And they've attached a little paper clip. It's got the rubber around it. And that's how the manufacturer.
Okay.
Well, she comes down the steps. She sees him getting in and settling in the suitcase. So she walks over there, and they see each other. They smile and laugh, and she zips him up. And she zips him up, and they laugh for a while. And they carry on. She sits on the couch. And at some point, he says, "I can't breathe."
And then?
Now, his face is facing the zipper, and she's got 2 or 3 inches that she's opened it. And she doesn't know. They're intoxicated. She doesn't know whether he's just saying that to try to get her to get him out or what. But he's a
Do you agree that she doesn't know he's in distress?
captive audience. Physically, they're the same size, but he's much stronger than her. If they got in a fist fight, he would win 100 times out of 100. But she's got him now. He claims he can't get out. He has to sit and listen. It's a unique form of physical restraint. And so she lets him have it. Says things she shouldn't say. You'll see the video. It's about 2 minutes long. She videotapes it. She sits on the couch and turns her phone on and videotapes it for about 2 minutes. There's another video that's approximately 11 minutes later. The first video, the suitcase is flipped upside down. The zipper's on the bottom.
So it seems like it took him around about 13 to 15 minutes to die. So obviously he could breathe, but it was it was limited. So in a way, this was like a agonizingly slow process of drowning. He's trying to breathe, but he can't sort of open his body because his body is like squeezed closed. And every time he tries to, if you think about it, the suitcase is pushing him in and he's trying to open his lungs, but he can't. And as he gets weaker, the suitcase is closing him each time. And each time he's getting a shallower and shallower breath. It must have been, can you imagine the claustrophobia? I mean, it's pretty horrifying to just to imagine.
11 minutes later, Sarah has flipped it right side up. Again, open for him to get out. And it's only 22 seconds when you hear George say Sarah. And that's it. Now, the key to the case is that 11 minutes.
Mm.
And what happened during that 11 minutes. Okay?
Yeah.
That is the key to this case.
Did nothing happen?
Sarah Boone will take the stand.
That should be
She
interesting.
will explain what happened.
Will she?
She will explain why it happened. The evidence will show that she was justified in the action she took to prevent an attack from George Torres, which the law acknowledges that every one of us has a right to invoke, the right of self-defense.
Hmm. Is that a reference to the stand your ground law?
You're going to hear from the medical examiner. She is going to tell you about some bruising on George Torres. Of course, he was in the suitcase a while, deceased, we believe. And that changes things a little bit, as the medical examiner will explain, but there's some bruising. Sarah's going to explain that to you, why that happened, what were the circumstances surrounding that, involving that. Her son comes and stays with them from time to time. He has his own room. He has several of his things there. And there's a bat downstairs. The same bat that George Torres used, and there's a video where George is threatening Sarah. And he's swinging the bat at the TV about as hard as he can. And he does it about 6 or 7 times. You'll see it. Sarah's recording it. And it's during an argument.
She did.
And he's trying to intimidate. Sarah loved you. You know, you're going to hear why women don't leave. Why women don't leave. And you're going to hear about Sarah Boone and her struggles, her mental health struggles. Sarah had no intent to kill. Prosecutor mentioned she wanted him to die. Farthest from the truth. She loved the man. She hated the abuse. She couldn't leave him. She tried. She tried kicking him out 6 or 7 times. He kept coming back. She changed the locks. He kept coming back. She didn't have the family. She didn't have the support. She was weak, vulnerable. You're going to hear it all. You've got to take that all into account to try to understand what happened and the circumstances surrounding this tumultuous relationship. Now, you're going to find that Sarah's not perfect. And, you know, as many of us do when we drink too much, you know, you sleep in. She slept in.
That's how afraid she was.
11, 12, 1, somewhere around there. She moseys downstairs looking for George.
So again, another similarity with the Karen Reed case is you have animus of some kind from the female towards the male. There's alcohol, excessive amounts of alcohol that are drunk. The male ends up dead. The woman ends up going to sleep, and then something else happens. Then there's the aftermath.
She thought he was on the computer looking for a job. She looked outside, maybe he's out smoking a cigarette, and she sees the suitcase.
I wonder whether the court reporter would put over their gestures with his hands. I wonder whether she would include that. Lawyer puts gestures with his hands on his head.
She unzips it. She gets him out. He's purple. She tries her best to do some CPR. She freaks out. The only family she's got is her ex-husband, really. She relies on him. As the prosecutor said, a lot of times she'll flee to her ex-husband's house. And where her son is at? Lucas. It's the only thing she knows to do. She was kind of a sheltered daughter when she was younger. She's smart, but she's not worldly. She calls Brian. What do I do? He said, I'm coming over. Please come over. He's about 5 minutes away. And she calls him again within a couple of minutes. Yeah, I'm on the way. He gets there. He walks in the foyer and sees his legs. He said, call 911. She calls 911 within a minute, 2. Detective Rodriguez arrives. You know, they got the body cam now, so it's recorded. So you're going to hear Sarah talking. But Sarah's freaking out. Sarah's thinking, and I'm somehow responsible. Eventually, she gives a statement to law enforcement. She gives one to Detective or Deputy Rodriguez. Of course, she's not the homicide investigator.
Eventually.
She's the first responder. And, you know, they know what to do. They try to assess the situation. They start putting the tape out. And then they call for the homicide investigators to come, which takes a little time. So she gets a statement from Sarah. Eventually, the homicide detectives get a statement from Sarah and one of the unmarked squad cars. And it's recorded. They hear that. And then the next day, they take Sarah's phone. Sarah gives them the phone, signs the consent to take the phone, take it to, they have a phone extraction people at the sheriff's department where they can take it.
So I wondered, did she delete the video and they extracted it?
Calls, text messages, photographs, videos, and they find these 2 videos. Sarah's not aware. She doesn't remember making the video. You can imagine. She gives them the phone. Well, she makes no attempts to do anything other than, here's the phone. So they tell her, you're going to get your phone back tomorrow. We'll bring it back to you tomorrow. Well, They end up having a conversation with the female detective, homicide detective, Hobson, is her name, Chelsea Hobson. And they end up, Deputy Cops was pregnant, or Detective Cops was pregnant. They end up, hey, we're not gonna bring your phone, I'm not feeling good, pregnant, can you come to the sheriff's department? Which Sarah Ben was to tell you, that was what I was going, that's what they told me I was going to the sheriff's department for. Well, instead, it was an interrogation. And they were going to arrest her. They made their mind up on it. And they were gonna confront her and try to get her to confess based on the two videotapes. And so there's approximately a 2-hour interrogation that was on the 25th in the afternoon when she got there to get her phone. They said, well, we got to come up here. We need to talk. And they got her in the room. It's a small room, but it's being videotaped and audio taped. And it goes on for about 2 hours of them trying to get a confession to murder. And it doesn't happen. But Sarah lies. She's scared. She can tell they're trying to pin her on this, that this was some kind of intentional act, and it was not. So she lies. She's not a lawyer. She doesn't know about.
She doesn't know how to lie.
She doesn't understand. She has a lawful right to defend herself. She doesn't understand that she's justified in using the force that she used. She doesn't. I wasn't there to advise her. No lawyer was there. So she lied. And you're going to hear that. So you're going to have to balance that versus her taking a stand and testifying before you. And we simply ask that you look for the evidence of cooperation of her testimony. It's going to be later, probably next week. The judges will tell you and read an instruction on evaluating a witness's credibility. And they'll talk about cooperative evidence, other evidence that's consistent with the testimony that Sarah Boone will give you. So you're going to have to weigh that in her testimony. Now, self-defense, we talked about it in jury selection, usually a gun, some deadly weapon. The suitcase in this case was a physical restraint or a blocking of an attack, but it was unconventional. Self-defense nonetheless. Now, as I said, the struggles that occurred, many of them involved the police. So you're going to actually hear from some of the police officers. Maybe some body cam footage. You're going to see some photographs that they took of the injuries to Sarah Boone. And some of the videos you may see of her in a very happy, joyful type of thing. Well, number one, she's intoxicated. Number two, she's safe. Police are there. So her attitude is not one of distress.
Okay. Do you guys know what second-degree murder is? Do you think this case should be first-degree murder, second-degree murder, or third-degree murder? Right? Now, what is interesting here is, and I'm not sure what I believe, but it's the idea that at the time that this happened, Sarah intends to harm Torres, right? George Torres. Then she sleeps. When she wakes up, does she wake up thinking, I'm glad he's dead? Does she wake up, bear in mind she was intoxicated at the time, does she wake up afterwards thinking, I'm glad he's dead, that is what I wanted, or does she kind of have a change of heart? again, the same applies to Karen Reed. Did Karen Reed intend to harm, what's his name? John O'Keefe? Maybe not kill him, but harm him. Then when he was harmed, when some hours had passed and she'd sobered up, did she still feel the same way? And so that's where you've got to decide, are we dealing with deliberate, sober, first-degree murder? And I think the key word there is sober. If you're not sober, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with a diminished intentionality, right? Is that what we're dealing with here? So have a look at this. So she's charged with second-degree murder, and second-degree murder is one that doesn't have any kind of premeditation and may only have been intended to cause harm. So there is an intention, and the intention is to cause harm. But think about this guy in a suitcase. Is it really just an intention to cause harm? Or did she just not appreciate, because she was so drunk, that harm could become death? And it's in this sense that it's a somewhat complicated case in a sense. Anyway, let's go back to the arguments.
You know, we're here today, full packed courtroom. Judge Graydon's here, but you're the most important people. Because you've got to decide this case honestly, fairly, and according to the law. And we talked about the two biggest principles from the Constitution that apply. In this case, and in every case in which a citizen like Sarah Boone is brought into a courtroom and accused of a crime. The first is, you as a juror must presume or believe that Sarah is innocent. And that belief stays with you throughout the entire trial. Because of that, she doesn't have to prove anything. That's why the state went first in jury selection. That's why the state went first today. That's why the state will go first putting on their case. They have the burden of proof, and it's the highest burden we recognize in any type of litigation in this country. Proof beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. You are going to have doubts about this case. But the most important thing is not to rush to judge it, to keep an open mind and understand there's two sides to this case. There's their side and there's our side. So you can't form any fixed opinions early on. That's hard to do, as Mr. Henderson said in jury selection. That's extremely hard to do. Now you're going to hear some testimony. There's been mention of experts. Battered women's experiences affect her perception of imminent danger. Battered women's experiences affect her perception of imminent danger. Victims of repeat violence may fear death in a situation others would not. After hearing both sides of this case, we're confident you're going to have a reasonable doubt. And we're going to ask you to follow the law and do justice in this case. And find Sarah Boone not guilty. Because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can the parties approach for a moment?
So, yeah, we have a 47-year-old woman. Just based on her appearance, based on her age, based on how she presents herself, do you think there's a chance that the jury might feel sorry for her? You think the jury might look at her and feel, even if she's guilty in a sense, that they feel she is the victim here? Is she the kind of person that is going to rub the jury the right way or the wrong way? Is she the kind of person that's probably going to elicit feelings of pity and sympathy from the jury? Do you think that's likely here? Fly on the Wall says her testimony will seal her fate. I think that's quite well put. Okay, let's jump ahead to some good audio. First witness. Is that perhaps his brother?
Sir, good morning. You could be seated. And once seated, if you'd state and spell your name for the record for us, please.
Juan Torres, Juantorres.
Thank you, sir. You may inquire, Mr. Cacciatore.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Can you tell us how it is that you know George Torres?
He's my older brother.
And how many siblings do you have?
6.
6, okay.
And
Took a while.
how long has your family resided here in the Central Florida area?
20 plus years.
And before residing in the Central Florida area, were you guys in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir. In Massachusetts.
Your brother, how often, your brother George, that is, how often would you talk with him?
Often we talk, say, on a weekly basis.
And how far away did you live from George?
About 5-10 minutes. Very close.
Would you see him pretty often?
I would try not to go over there too much.
Who was George living with at the time that he passed away?
Wait, Sarah?
And without getting into many details, what was your relationship like with Sarah?
We didn't really have a relationship.
Soft spoken, eh?
Would it be fair to say you didn't get along with her?
Yes.
Back on February 23rd, 2020, did you have an occasion to talk to your brother on that day?
Yes, sir.
And when you spoke with your brother on that day, did you FaceTime with him or did you speak with him over the phone?
We talked on the phone.
Was that phone to your ear or was that phone?
It was on speaker.
And who was present?
My wife and my 2 kids.
And without,
You kind of get the feeling the attorney knows the answer to that question. That's why I asked it in that way, right?
telling us anything that George may have said to you, can you tell us what the topic of that conversation was?
we were just talking like we normally did. He just calling me to check on me, basically.
Now, in the background of that conversation on the evening of February 23rd, 2020, what did you hear?
Sarah's in the background yelling.
You recognized her voice?
Yes.
What was she yelling about?
Something about choking or how he choked her. I really don't.
Choking.
That was it.
About how long was this conversation that you had?
Maybe 10 minutes, I think it was.
How did the conversation end?
Because she was yelling in the background. So we just,
So she's clearly upset.
Did she sound upset?
she sounded upset.
Did you talk to your brother after that conversation?
No, that was the last conversation I had.
Have you ever spoken to Sarah since that conversation?
No.
I have no further questions.
Short
In
and sweet.
cross-examination.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
In the beginning, when you started, it was hard for me to hear, but I know you were talking about other siblings, other family members that you had here. Could you repeat that for me, please?
Here in Orlando, I have one sister and 3 brothers.
Sister and 3 brothers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, did your brother George Torres, did he ever stay with you at any time?
No.
Would he ever live with you or any of, I mean, not you, but any of your other siblings?
No.
All right, sir. Let's go back to this phone call that you were talking about that was on February 23rd of 2020. And that phone call was approximately 7:30. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And who called who?
He called me.
And then y'all were talking. Is that correct?
Sir.
All right. And
Hey, Snakebite.
when
Good to see
he
you.
called you, did you notice anything about his speech or his voice?
No, he was fine.
Sounded normal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he wasn't slurring his words or anything like that?
No.
By the way he talked or what he talked to you about, could you tell at that time if he had been consuming alcohol?
No. Because I knew when he would drink.
Okay. So in your opinion at that time, based on what you heard and what he was talking about, you do not believe he had been drinking alcohol?
No.
Wonder if they're going to try and catch him out.
Now, you said you heard Sarah.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? How did you know it was Sarah?
I could tell in her voice.
You recognized her voice. So you could hear her. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And you've heard Sarah speak before that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've heard her speak on the phone before that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you said that Sarah was yelling. Is that correct, sir? And she was yelling about, he's choking me. Or tell him about choking me.
Yes.
Okay. During that conversation, and you heard her say that, did you ask your brother, what is she talking about?
Yeah,
No, I did not.
that's quite big.
Did that statement at that time, did that statement surprise you?
Not really.
You've heard it before?
No.
So can you see how there's a little bit of an attempt here to undermine the state's witness by basically saying, okay, so you heard Sarah in the background talking about choking, and then didn't you ask your brother about that? Didn't you? She's shouting in the background. Aren't you asking anything about that? I think most of us would. Most of us would say, what's that all about? So that is a little bit peculiar, and it is the defense scoring at least a point on this point. Do you agree?
Based on Sarah's voice that you've heard, was it any indication to you that she had been drinking?
No.
No? Sir, at some point, your brother said he had to go, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did he hang up on the conversation?
Yes.
And did he say bye and you say bye?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I don't have, if I can.
You may, sir.
Must I'm a little surprised that the state has opened with this witness. I don't know if the idea is to humanize the victim, to give the jury a sense of George via his brother, you know. I mean, what do you think when you see his brother? He seems quite gentle, he seems quite sweet, he seems quite harmless, right? But personally, I would have thought that you would start with the first responding officer or even the coroner. So it looks like the suitcase might be in this box, which is not very big.
Sir, other than siblings, your mother and father, do they live in this area?
Yes.
Were there times that George would stay with them?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. No further.
What?
Any redirect examination?
No, Your Honor.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense?
Actually, we'll keep him subject to recall, Your Honor.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
All right, sir. You're released subject to recall by either party. Thank you.
State would call Devin Jamro.
Look at Sarah in the foreground. She seems to be smiling. Something tells me the next witness might be from law enforcement. What do you guys say?
Sir, good morning. You could take a seat and please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Devin Jamro. That's DEVINJAMRO.
Thank you. You may inquire, sir.
Sir, who do you work for?
I work for Public Supermarkets.
And what is your position with public supermarkets?
I am the assistant store manager.
And at what location?
Okay, so this is probably going to deal with how much alcohol did you sell to certain people?
Currently the Castleberry location.
Were you at the location on Goldenrod and University Boulevard back in February of 2020?
Yes, I was.
I wonder if they're going to introduce CCTV.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness which has been previously marked for identification as States D and been shown to defense?
D's in Delta?
D is in Delta.
Yes, you may.
Sir, I'm showing you it's been marked for identification as States D. Could you use these scissors and open this and look at the contents of this package to yourself?
Sure.
I wonder if it's it looks like it's a document. I suppose it could be a flash drive.
Sir, do you recognize those items?
I do.
Receipts.
And tell us, what are these items?
These are Publix receipts.
Aha.
Are these receipts evidence of transactions at Publix? Are they made at or near the time of each transaction?
They are absolutely made at the time of the transaction.
And is it in the normal course of business that Publix keeps these receipts?
Yes.
And these fairly and accurately appear to be the receipts from your Publix store?
Yep.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification as States D into evidence.
Any objections?
No objection?
What was pre-marked as States D will be received into evidence without objection as States 1.
So how would your supermarket and your receipts reflect on the kind of person you are? Are you buying
Your Honor, may I approach the witness who's been
large amounts of alcohol? Are you buying large amounts of chocolate? Are you buying large amounts of vegetables? Are you buying a balanced, healthy diet that if you were put on trial, it would be, well, we find you guilty of eating healthily or not guilty of eating healthily?
previously marked for identification as States J and shown to defense?
You may.
So I'm showing you it's been marked for identification as States J. Can you take a look at that disc?
Yes,
Do you see your initials on that disc?
I do.
Did you have an opportunity to look at that disc prior to coming to court this morning?
I wonder if that's
I
on
did, yes.
CCTV.
And tell us, what is that disc?
This is CCTV footage burned from the camera system at the location.
And at Publix, is it the regular practice?
Must I see, putting CCTV on a disc is pretty old tech, wouldn't you say? When last did you use a disc? When last did you burn information onto a disc?
Of Publix to utilize surveillance cameras?
Yes.
And in the normal course of business, are the videos from those surveillance cameras kept?
Yes.
And are these the cameras taken from February 23rd, 2020? And I believe there's 2 video clips included, one at 12:17 p.m. and another at approximately 5:39 p.m.
Yes.
And they fairly inaccurately represent the surveillance video that was submitted from publics to law enforcement.
This also feels like an echo of the CCTV in the Karen Reed case, where what's the last thing they did? Well, they were at a bar, and how much did they drink? How much was consumed? Well, a lot of alcohol was consumed.
In this case.
They do. Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification, Estates J, into evidence.
Any objections?
No objection.
What was pre-marked as States J will be received into evidence without objection as States 2.
And I have no further questions for this witness.
Any cross-examination? Can this witness be released?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You're released.
Thank you.
Have a great day. State, you may call your next witness.
State would call Joan Williams.
Joe Williams. I have to say, I've personally found the opening arguments on both sides very underwhelming. I would have expected more emotion, certainly from the state side. Certainly was a very colorless, bland, boring, matter-of-fact opening statement from both sides.
Ma'am, good morning. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
The 911 call tape.
Okay, Joan, Joan, Williams, Williams.
Thank you, ma'am. Counselor, you may inquire.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Can you tell us what it is that you do for a living?
I'm a 911 call taker at Orange County Sheriff's Office,
And how long have you held that position?
24 years.
And tell us, what are your duties as a 911 call taker?
I answer phones for emergency, non-emergency, medical, which I transfer to the medical side of the business.
And is it the regular practice of Orange County to record 911 calls?
All lines are recorded.
And is it the regular practice of Orange County to keep records of each of those 911 calls?
Yes.
And those records are made at or near the time of each call, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness which has been previously marked for identification as states L and been shown to defense?
May.
Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been previously marked for identification as states L. Do you recognize this disc?
Yes. My initials.
Did you have an opportunity to review this disc prior to coming to court this morning?
Yes.
And those are your initials on the disc?
Yes.
And does this disc, does it fairly and accurately represent the 911 call that you took in this case on February 24th, 2020 at 12:59 hours?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification as states L into evidence.
Any objections?
No objection.
It was pre-marked as States L will be received with no objection as States 3.
Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Any cross-examination?
No, sir.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Can the parties approach momentarily?
Quite interesting that 911 call came in at 12:59. Did Sarah Boone call 911? Anyone know this case that well that you can answer that? In the Karen Reed case, did Karen Reed call 911? I wonder who Boone did call 911 the next day. Shall we play that call so long?
911, what is the location of your emergency?
4748 France Court, apartment 3.
4748, what's the street name?
France, FRANTZ.
And the apartment number?
3.
Is this a police or medical?
My boyfriend is dead.
Okay, send the line for the fire department. Do
State, you
not
may call your
hang
next
up.
witness.
State would call Vincent Battaglia.
Fire rescue. What's the location emergency?
That's 32.
No, please don't leave.
4748 France Lane, apartment 3,
France Court.
France Court.
Yes.
Okay, is this near Mackenzie Drive?
I don't know where that is.
Okay, fine, okay.
It's Tealwood Park Apartments.
She sounds
Okay, 4748 France, correct?
concerned, right?
All right, correct. Now tell me exactly what happened there.
My boyfriend and I were playing last night, and I put him in his case and we were playing. And
Just, I put him in a
like kind of
suitcase.
hide and seek kind of thing. So I fell asleep and I woke up and he was dead in the suitcase. So I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Right, okay, what's your apartment number?
3.
Apartment 3?
Yes, like he has like blood coming out of his mouth, and I don't know if like he had like an aneurysm or what happened.
Right, okay, all right, okay. Listen, we're getting help out there too. All right, okay. Okay,
Right now?
Okay, yeah, man, listen, we're on our way out there. You're at 407-716-8684. Okay, is he hanging from somewhere or what, ma'am?
No, I pulled him out of the suitcase. I tried giving him CPR.
Okay, so he was in a suitcase?
Yes, and I fell asleep.
She does say, I
Okay,
put
how
him in
old
the
is the-
suitcase. That's
How old is the
crucial.
boyfriend, ma'am? 42-year-old male. All right. Okay, we're sending help out there. Sheriff's officer on the way out there?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Listen to me. Okay. I just need to confirm this one. No, right. I understand. I just need to confirm.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there and let's return to this. Yeah, that's also an important point. Did she give him CPR? Is there evidence that she gave him CPR? Is her DNA perhaps on or near his mouth? That kind of thing. I mean, that could theoretically be true if she was very drunk, right?
Sir, you may be seated. After you're seated, if you can state and spell your name for the record for us.
Vincent Battaglia, Vincent Battaglia.
Thank you.
His voice sounds like that guy in Independence Day. You know the guy I'm talking about. Any chance you think this guy's from law enforcement? Where do you think he fits into the story?
Sir, you may inquire.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Can you tell us what it is you do for a living?
Right now I work for an auto parts company,
And where do you live?
New Jersey.
Back on February of 2020, where were you living at that time?
I was living at the Tealwood Apartments in Winter Park, Florida.
And what were you doing at that time when you were living at Tealwood?
I was enrolled in Full Sail University. I was in school.
When you were living at Tealwood, did you have any roommates?
Yeah, I had one roommate, Brandon. Yeah, that was it. Them.
That's Brandon Motes.
Yes.
Did you have neighbors?
Yeah.
Were you neighbors with Sarah Boone and George Torres?
Yes.
And approximately how long were you neighbors with them?
About a year. A little over a year. I moved there in January 2019.
And during the course of that year that you were neighbors with them, did you have occasion to interact with them at times?
Yeah.
Did they argue?
In fact, did you ever go over to their home?
Yeah, like a couple times, yeah.
And I believe you tuned a guitar for a child there at the house?
Yeah.
This Tealwood apartment complex, how would you describe the walls that separated your units?
Thin.
Thin, like very thin walls.
And
Did you
with
hear
those
stuff?
walls being so thin, would you ever have occasion to hear arguing and yelling coming from Sarah Boone and George Torres's apartment?
Yeah.
Who yelled at who the most?
How often would you hear this?
Almost daily.
Daily.
Did Sarah Boone ever approach you about the things that you heard coming from their apartment?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
And where were you when she approached you?
I was smoking a cigarette on my back patio.
And approximately what time?
It was
this?
pretty late. I can't remember the exact time, but it was definitely anywhere between like midnight to 2 a.m., like right around there.
And do you remember how much before the date when the police called that this occurred?
A few months, like it
That's a
probably
while.
4 to 5 months before that.
So 4 or 5 months before February of 2020.
Yeah, so she wasn't complaining
And
in the days.
when she approached you on this late evening / early morning on that day, what did she tell you?
Pretty much just kind of like if I do hear anything like through the walls or whatever is out back, just kind of keep my mouth shut. Like don't
That's
really speak
interesting.
about it or
It's not a
anything
big
like that, or
deal.
say anything to anyone.
Thanks, fly on the
I just
wall.
was like,
Thank you.
okay.
Did she make any motions with her hands?
Yeah, like just kind of like, finger over the lips, like kind of shh, like keep it hush, like that kind of thing.
So it seems like she's not
you
saying it's a big deal.
not to report anything you may have heard about arguments or yelling or fighting, anything going on over there.
Yeah.
Do you recall the evening of February 23rd, 2020?
I do, yeah.
And what about that evening sticks out to you?
That sticks out to me from that night was literally just there was a very, very loud noise that I heard that was loud and powerful enough to shake my bedroom wall. And I remember that because I was sitting on my bed on FaceTime with my girlfriend at the time, and I literally felt the wall shake and it stopped me mid-conversation. And she even asked me through the computer, like, what was that? And I was like, I have no idea.
Wonder whether that was the suitcase falling on the
Hear any
ground or
yelling
something.
coming from their apartment on that night?
Before that, yeah, like it was just arguing kind of stuff.
What was the last thing you heard?
The last thing I heard was like the loud noise and just a little bit of shuffling, and that was kind of it. It just kind of went silent after that.
Could you hear anything that was being said?
Not clearly, and it was never really anything clear. It was just like you could hear arguing back and forth, just kind of like an I hate you, like it's whatever it is, whatever the argument was about kind of thing. At the time, that's really all it was, but it was never really clear enough to hear like the full argument. And honestly, I never really paid attention too much to it. If I heard it, I kind of stepped into my living room to be further away from it.
Did you hear both the defendant's voice and also George Torres's voice.
Yeah, all the time. It was like a back and forth.
So other than the statements and the phrases of I hate you, you weren't able to discern the contents of this argument.
No.
What was the
So I just want to break in for a moment and make a quick comment. I once heard an argument very clearly. I was upstairs. At that point, I was a tenant in someone's home. I was renting the upstairs portion. My bedroom was literally, there's a window near the door of my bedroom which went into the kitchen downstairs, and I guess they were arguing in the kitchen. And what I remember from that argument, I still remember it quite clearly now, is the guy's voice was so high pitched that there were definitely times I couldn't tell when it was her speaking or him speaking. And it made me think of the Oscar Pistorius case where the defense was, well, that it was only him shouting, only him speaking, and that he screams like a woman. And I was quite surprised hearing what I was hearing and kind of going, I can't actually tell whether that's a woman's voice or a man's voice. Because this guy, when he got upset, his voice would go kind of quite high. And he's quite a big guy and quite a tall guy, but his voice would kind of go up a few pitches when he got really indignant. And I was listening to this and I was really surprised because I was like, wow, I actually can't tell in certain instances whether that was her voice or his voice. But if you'd asked me, is there only one voice that you can hear? Was there only one voice? I would have said without any doubt, there was a man and a woman. Sometimes I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but there was definitely two people, and one of them was definitely a man. I couldn't tell exactly when it was the woman or the man, but there were times when I could tell it was the man and the woman. It was just something that I found quite interesting. Anyway, let's continue.
the last sound you heard?
The last sound that I heard was like the loud banging noise that it was like a very odd sounding noise that I've never heard before this day, but it very much sounded like it was like where my bed was positioned. It was kind of towards the back of the apartment, and it almost sounded like it was coming towards me, but like on the side of me, you know. Then it was just like a loud rumbling noise, like that literally sounded like it was kind of far away from me, and then it like ended up like almost next to me. And like I said, the walls are thin, so like it's very easy to hear like through the walls, and not even just sideways. Like I hear my upstairs neighbor, like all around, very thin walls.
Now, was your bedroom, where was it located in your apartment?
The back of the apartment. So it was like, there's like a little kick out next to my patio, and that's like, that was my bedroom back there, like along the grass back there.
On the first floor?
On the first floor, yeah. Yeah.
I have no further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Are we going through these witnesses super quickly?
Mr. Tagley, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you said that you lived there next to Sarah Boone and George Torres for about a year?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that the police were called to their residence?
Like
while you were there for the year, are you aware of any incident in which the police were called to their residence?
I had never seen anybody there, but I had had other neighbors in the complex tell me that it has been on multiple occasions. So that's why.
Just instead of what somebody else told you.
Yeah.
Just what you would observe. Did you ever, the year that you were there living next to them?
Yeah.
Were you ever aware that the police were called to their residence?
No, the times that I was home, I never saw any police at the apartment there.
And did you work odd hours or?
Yeah, and with my schooling and stuff too, I used to have class at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So all the time I was at random moments, like just not home throughout the day and night and stuff like that. So yeah.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not, based on your interaction with Sarah Boone?
I'm going to object.
Let me finish the question first, please.
Do you know from your experience with Sarah Boone and your experience with George Torres that they drank alcohol?
Yeah.
Hang on.
I'll withdraw to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Are you aware that they both consumed alcohol to excess?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, of course.
Would it make much of a difference if it was only him drinking alcohol? Would it make much of a difference if it was only her drinking alcohol?
Well, Vincent, I think you had testified, you may have given a statement to law enforcement,
Yes, it was one of the detectives.
a recorded statement.
Yes, I can't remember his name, but yes.
Okay, and I think it was on February 23rd of 2020.
Yeah, right around that time, yeah.
I believe you had said that,
I'm going to object as to improper impeachment.
Approach.
Sarah's scribbling notes. She's very caught up in everything. Now, one of the little tricks
Objections
that
overruled for now.
one of the little tricks that you'll see defense lawyers employ is when the prosecutor is presenting his case, the accused looks bored, disinterested, perhaps even just looks down, but there's not really much reaction. When the defense presents their case, the jury take their cue from the defendant and notice them nodding, notice them engaged, notice them taking notes, and notice them basically validating the testimony of their own counsel. That's quite a common trick you see in criminal courtrooms all the time.
would it be fair to say on that date you got home around 7 p.m.?
7 p.m.?
Yes.
Which day was this?
Sunday, February 23rd, 2020.
No, that day I actually got home from work probably around 1 or 2 o'clock or so.
In the morning?
No, in the afternoon. Because I went to work that morning at around 5 a.m.
And you said that you heard the normal yelling and arguing at about that time when you got home?
No, it was around that time, but it was really around like 10 o'clock, 10:30 is when like the arguing I could very hear clearly. It was like around 10:30 at night.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Just very briefly.
Yes, sir.
So on cross-examination, you were asked about the arguing you heard, and I believe your testimony was that it was pretty intense around 10:30.
Yeah.
Approximately what time was it that you heard this loud crashing thump sound that you described?
Little after that.
Overruled.
It was a little after that arguing and stuff. It was probably around 11:15, probably 30, 45 minutes after like the arguing I could hear started.
No other questions?
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Not subject to recall.
We would like him subject to recall. You've got his number.
Okay.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes.
Okay, I wonder if we can jump ahead to the next witness.
Name for the record for us.
Yeah, my name is Brandon Moats, BRANDON MOATS.
Thank you. Mr. Cacciatore, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us how it is that you knew Sarah Boone?
I moved into the apartment next door to her when I was in college.
And so when was that you were in college?
I would have moved down here in 2019 and would have been there until like 2021, 2022.
So she was your neighbor at Tealwood Apartments, is that correct?
Yeah, it would have been Tealwood back then, yeah.
And did you have any roommates back then?
Yes, I was rooming with Vincent Battaglia.
And during that time, what were you doing? Yeah,
Like,
as far as work and school?
I was just going to school. During the time of this, yeah, I would have just been going to school. I don't think I would have had my job yet. I was just a student.
Did you have much interaction with the defendant or with George Torres in this case?
Honestly, I avoided them as much as possible usually.
The apartment where you lived, tell us, how would you describe the walls that separated the units?
Yeah, I remember that my bedroom was like the front facing bedroom and our walls shared a wall with where their staircase was. So like the way the apartments were laid out, we had a 1-story apartment, they had a 2-story apartment. So they had a staircase running right next to the walls next to like our bedrooms.
Would you ever have occasion to hear arguing and yelling going on inside of the defendant's apartment?
Yes, the walls were pretty thin. So if people were yelling, you could definitely hear it.
And how often would you hear arguments or disagreements going on over there?
When I first moved in, it was it was at least like once a week, to the point that I started tuning them out. Like I got good enough at just like not listening to them. They argued very, very often.
Do you recall the evening of February 23rd, 2020?
Yes, sir.
And on that evening, could you hear arguing going on in their unit?
Not late into the evening, earlier into the evening, probably like 7, 8 o'clock. That evening, probably like earlier on, I could hear arguing.
And where were you inside of your apartment?
I would have been in my bedroom pretty much all night.
And your bedroom, just so that we can paint the picture, where would that would it have been, on the first floor or the second floor?
We had a first floor apartment.
Okay, so all the units were, or all the bedrooms were on the first floor.
Yeah, like I was saying before, we had a 1-story apartment, and then they next door had like a 2-story townhouse. So we only had the 1 floor.
Understood.
It's really crazy that they haven't.
And at a certain point in the evening, did you hear a loud crashing sound?
Yeah, probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock that evening.
Well, that's interesting that they can give the timestamp.
Can you describe that sound for us in more detail?
10:30.
I mean, yeah, at literally, like I said, at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, it's the way their staircase was set up. I could, my bedroom, the top of their staircase would have been like above my ceiling. It ends next to where like my roommate's apartment was. So I could hear something start above me super loud and then fall away from me. Like it was falling down the stairs.
Oh, wow.
Did this affect the walls that were between your 2 apartments?
Oh yeah, me and my roommate, I remember me and my roommate talking the next day about like we could literally, like, it shook both of our rooms.
So doesn't this suggest that when Sarah put him in the suitcase, they were both upstairs and he was in bed, he was lying on the bed, and she then put him in the suitcase and then rolled him down the stairs? Because didn't he die in the lounge downstairs?
Did you ever have occasion to talk with the defendant about what happened?
I never saw her after that. She would have, yeah, I never saw her after that happened.
No further questions.
I'm just quite astonished that they still haven't called anyone from law enforcement. It's usually that's the first or second witness.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, you were asked by the state if you ever had any interactions with Sarah Boone or George Torres. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think you said you tried
Defense lawyer would be fantastic with ASMR.
to avoid them.
Yeah, I don't like drunk people, and they were drunk a lot, so I did not interact with them.
Do you remember this interaction with Sarah Boone in 2009 when you woke up and witnessed Sarah?
I would have been 9 years old in 2009.
I'm sorry, 2019.
Quite clever.
In 2019, when you woke up and witnessed Sarah sleeping on the concrete patio.
Oh, this may have been a slight misconception in how I said this. I never woke up and saw her sitting on the patio myself. That I would have seen her on the patio eventually, but it's not like I woke up and went back and saw her on the patio. This was my roommate relaying the story that she had fallen asleep on the back patio, and then I saw her.
So you did not witness that yourself, or did you see her?
I saw her asleep on the back patio. I was just clearing up the sequence of events there.
Okay, thank you. Another time, do you recall our interaction with Miss Boone when you were coming home from school and she was...
So I think what the defense are trying to angle towards here is that, so if she's sleeping outside, is that because she felt afraid? Is she being mistreated? I think that's what they're trying to take the narrative towards.
trying to talk to you, and she seemed paranoid and rambling. And
Yeah, I had gotten locked out of my apartment, so I was waiting on the steps I was waiting on the steps outside of my apartment for my roommate to get home. So she came up and started talking to me. I don't really remember too many details of what she was saying, because I didn't want to talk to her. But yeah.
Okay. Do you remember saying that you believe Sarah was avoiding going into her apartment?
That's definitely the vibe. I don't remember what she was saying, but the vibe she was giving off was that she didn't want to go home.
Now, I believe, and I just want to make sure that I heard you, you said that the first arguments, other than the boom, which was 10 something, initially it was around 7 p.m. You heard arguing?
It would have, yeah, because it would have been. I remember that day I got home from class around 5, because I got out of class around 4:30 usually and walked home, so I would have gotten home around 5:30, and it would have been after because I came home, I made myself lunch, and I took a shower, and then I heard all of their arguing, so it would have been about an hour and a half, 2 hours after I got home, so around 7 to 8 o'clock.
And during that time, when you say arguing, was it back and forth?
I honestly, I wouldn't really be able to say if it was back and forth. I don't know I wouldn't remember too vividly.
Was tuning it out, right?
Well, let me ask you this: did you hear a male voice?
Yes, I heard a male voice.
Did you hear a female voice?
Yes.
Okay. Were they both loud?
Yes.
Good questions there. Keep it simple.
If I can confirm, Judge.
Yes, sir, of course.
Doing a bit of a scan of the courtroom.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Subject to recall, Judge.
All right. All right, sir, you're released subject to recall. Thank you. Can the parties approach?
Okay. So I think there was a recess, and through the power of a delayed live, we can now travel through time and jump right into the next witness. Looks like we're going to have some kind of digital presentation. How many times did Sarah fire her attorneys? She was also very keen on representing herself. Okay, so this is the next one. He looks like some kind of expert. I wonder if he is the coroner, if he's a doctor.
Mr. Golden, raise your right hand and be sworn, please. You swear or affirm the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing.
Or did he extract the data from the
Sir, good
device?
afternoon. You could be seated. After seated, if you could please state and spell your name for the record for us.
Brian Boone, B-R-I-A-N-B-O-O-N-E.
Thank you, sir. You may inquire.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell us how it is that you know the defendant?
I dated her for quite a while, and then we eventually got married.
When you say you dated her for quite a while, how long are we talking?
I met her in the late 90s, and I believe it was around 2005 when we got married.
Did you have any children as a result of your marriage with the defendant?
Yes, we had one son.
And how old is that son?
He is currently getting ready to turn 14.
Did your marriage with the defendant last?
No, it did not.
And approximately when was it that you separated and began proceedings for divorce?
Probably 2017.
So married 12 years.
Thinking maybe.
Quite a while.
And at that time, when was your divorce actually finalized?
Maybe it was 2006. I think the divorce was 2017. I believe.
And
He looks happy about it.
after your divorce, what was your custody arrangement with your son that you had in common with the defendant?
She was supposed to have him on Mondays and Tuesdays. I would have him Wednesday, Thursdays, and then we'd alternate Friday through Sundays every other week.
So 1 week you would have 5 days with your son, and another week she would have 5 days with him.
Correct.
Seems fair.
And was this still the same custody arrangement in February of 2020?
Yes.
And in February of 2020, did you have, do you recall the events that occurred, I guess, first on the late evening of February 23rd, 2020?
On that evening?
Yes.
Well, apparently, Sarah called me at one point during the night.
Do you recall about
I think someone said that it was her husband, that her ex-husband Brian, who told her to call 911. Remember?
what time she called you?
I think it was 11 something.
When you answered the phone, how did Sarah sound on the phone?
She sounded like she had been drinking, was pretty drunk.
Were you able to understand what the defendant was saying?
Somewhat, but she woke me up. I had work the next day. I was asleep when she called. She's done this before, calling me late at night, and generally I kind of just try to ignore it, so I wasn't really paying attention.
Who was she living with at the time?
George Torres?
When she called you late that evening, could you hear George in the background at all?
Not that I remember, no.
Did you pay much attention to this phone call?
No.
Now, the following morning, on February 24th, 2020, did you begin to call the defendant?
Yes, I did.
And approximately what time did you begin to call the defendant?
I think it was like 11 o'clock or something.
And why
It's interesting that he called and she didn't answer, which shows you she was potentially very in that sort of hungover sleep, right?
was it that you were calling her?
Well, it was going to be Monday. I had him on Sunday and dropped him off at school, and I was calling to try to find out if she was going to be actually picking him up that day.
Why would you have a question about whether or not she was picking him up?
She wasn't generally very good about actually getting him on the day she was supposed to.
So it was not uncommon for you to have to remind her to pick him up or to make sure that she was going to pick him up?
Well, I mean, remind or just find out if she was going to or if.
Seems like this is another side to her. Would you say that Sarah was a responsible, conscientious mother? I mean, that's the other side to it. What kind of lover, friend was she to George Torres, but also what kind of person, what kind of mother was she to her own son? Dutiful, diligent, kind, caring, sensitive, nurturing. What other words are there? Committed, invested. You know, is she part of his life and sort of engaged, or is she sort of disconnected and sort of reckless and kind of selfishly doing what she wants to do? Is she kind of because she's addicted or because she's drinking a lot, she's unreliable, she's not particularly able to care for somebody else?
She was just going to give him over to me as what happened.
Do you remember at what time on February 24th you actually got in touch with the defendant?
I think it was like 12:30 or something.
And when you actually got in touch with her, what did she tell you on the phone?
That George was dead and if I would come over.
Did she say what happened to him?
I don't remember if she told me then on the phone or when I got.
It's quite interesting. His eyes, his eyes go to the left and then up. Did you notice that? Let's just play that back again.
I had him on Sunday and dropped him off at school, and I was calling to try to find out if she was going to be actually picking him up that day.
Why would you have a question about whether or not she was picking him up?
She wasn't generally very good about actually getting him on the day she was supposed to.
So it was not uncommon for you to have to remind her to pick him up or to make sure that she was going to pick him up.
Well, I mean, remind or just find out if she was going to, or if she was just going to give him over to me as what happened.
Do you remember at what time
Do you
on February
remember?
24th you actually got in touch with the defendant?
Now look where his eyes go.
I think it was like 12:30 or something.
Okay, that's not
And when
it.
you actually got in touch with her, what did she tell you on the phone?
Look where his eyes are going, to the left.
That George was dead, and if I would come over.
Did she say what happened to him?
There, you see, his eyes are going to go left.
Um,
You see, that's often when you're remembering. And now you'll see his eyes go upwards.
I don't remember if she told me.
See over there. And that's often when someone is trying to remember something, the eyes will go to the left, remembering something specific. And if they're trying to reach for something that may not be there, or trying to remember something that they're struggling to remember, you might look upwards. I'm not trying to accuse him of dishonesty. I'm just simply saying that is how people often look when they're asked to remember something.
Then on the phone or when I got there, but she told me they had been playing hide and seek and that she fell asleep.
What did you advise her to do?
I told her she needed to call 911 and
Yeah, that's what we said a bit earlier.
that I would.
So that is very interesting that she calls him and she doesn't call 911. It is pretty interesting, isn't it?
Come over as soon as I could.
And this is on your first phone call.
Now, why do you think she calls her ex-husband to come over? What's he supposed to do? I mean, there's a dead body in her house. Why must her ex-husband come over?
All here at approximately 12:30.
Yes.
On 2/24/20.
Yes.
Did you?
What do you guys think? Why does she call her ex-husband when she knows there's a dead person in her house? What does she think's going to happen?
Did she call you again while you were en route to her residence?
She did. She called to find out if I was still going to be coming over.
And when you spoke with her while you were en route, what, if anything, did you advise her?
I told her she needed to call 911 and told her I was on my way, but she needed to get somebody over there.
How long did it take you to arrive at her residence?
From the first phone call or?
Yes, from the first one.
Well, I mean, I live a minute or two drive away, but I had to get my puppy. We had just gotten a puppy recently. I had to get him in his crate and stuff like that and put something on because I was working from home. And total time, maybe 10 minutes.
Well, I think it's just as well it took him a while to get there. But think about it. Can you imagine if he went straight there and the police found him there and her there? What would have happened? What would have happened if the police arrived? I don't actually know the answer to this. I'm assuming the police got there before him. I don't know if that's true, but can you imagine if the police arrived and then he's there and then there's her dead boyfriend is in the suitcase?
When you arrived at her apartment, tell us what she told you when you arrived.
George was dead, and I don't remember if she told me now or before that they had been playing hide and seek and she fell asleep. But
did she ever play hide and seek with you?
I at that time told her again she needed to get 911.
Well, So he did arrive before the police. I wonder what that led to, if anything. Because, the 911 call took something like 12 minutes. So you can imagine that the police could have arrived after him, and it looks like they did.
Called to get somebody over there.
Had she called 911 at this point?
No, she had not.
That's crazy. So he tells her to call 911, and then he comes over and she still hasn't called 911.
So you've advised her now.
I think that puts into perspective. I mean, when she calls 911, it sounds kind of urgent. But I mean, the fact that she waited for her ex-husband to arrive and then called 911, doesn't that make it seem like she's already trying to cover it up? That makes it seem like there's some post-meditation here.
3 times to call 911.
Yes.
Did you hear that? He had to tell her 3 times to call 911. And I think that tells you she doesn't want to call 911 and she doesn't want to be held accountable. She's trying to already wriggle out of this.
Did you go inside of her apartment?
I walked in the front door into the little tiled area, like entranceway thing.
What, if anything, did you observe when you made it to that point?
Looking into the living room, I could see like the end of his feet and maybe a little bit of some legs that were kind of coming out around the backside of the kitchen area.
Did you continue to go into the apartment?
No.
Why is he in the backside of the kitchen area?
Sarah told me she was going to call 911 and go outside and have a cigarette and a drink and asked me to come out there with her. And I told her that I didn't really feel comfortable being inside. And I went out front and got in my car and waited for people to show up.
Did you witness the defendant call 911?
I think I was in there when she dialed it and first got somebody on the phone, but I wasn't there for the whole conversation. No, I was outside.
Did you stay there at the scene while police arrived?
Yes, I was there. I was part of it. I knew I'd have to talk to somebody, so
Did you talk with law enforcement?
I did.
Sure, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Judge, we want to reserve our questions for when we call him in our case.
Okay. All right, sir. You're subject to recall.
Wow,
Thank you.
no cross-examination. Do you think that guy's wearing a wig?
Just as long as he remains under
You
supervision.
think Brian is wearing a wig?
My understanding is subject to recall.
So somebody will contact me about when I come back?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do you notice she didn't look up at him?
State, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, may we approach a moment?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if we can jump ahead to the next witness. We're almost at parity with the actual live stream.
Mr. Castro, you may inquire.
Still no law enforcement. That's crazy.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Tell us, what do you do for a living?
I'm a maintenance supervisor for apartment complexes.
Is that what your position was back in February of 2020?
Yes, it was.
And what apartment complex?
Tealwood Park Apartments.
And how long did you work for Tealwood Park Apartments?
About 2 years.
And tell us, what were some of your duties in your position there with Tealwood Park?
Daily, I cleaned the grounds, walked the property, answered maintenance calls, did emergencies, dealt with vendors.
Did you become familiar with the residents there at
Someone says, who would buy a gray hair wig? Or maybe a senior citizen.
the apartment complex?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to meet the defendant in this case and also a George Torres?
Yes.
Let me turn your attention to February 24th of 2020. Do you recall that date?
Yes.
And on that date, did you have occasion to come in contact with the defendant in this case?
Yes, I did.
And tell us, what was the circumstances in which you came into contact with her on February 24th, 2020?
I was called by the manager and the assistant manager to come to her unit. I believe she was already sitting outside at that time.
And when she was sitting outside of her unit, what, if anything, did you observe about her and about the unit?
The police was there. Her ex-husband was present. She was sitting outside, and that's when she decided she wanted to talk to me and the managers.
And what did she tell you?
She's confused. She's not exactly sure what happened. She pointed out that she recalls that they were playing a game of hide and seek. There was an instance where you were going to teach him a lesson, and then she just doesn't recall anything else until the next morning.
Did she say she fell asleep?
Yes, she did.
Did she say things got out of hand?
I don't really recall that part, but I do recall her stating that they were playing their game and that George went into a suitcase, and I didn't ask any questions. I just let her talk for herself
How long was this conversation?
for about 4 or 5 minutes.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, sir.
Wonder how long this trial's going to go on?
You may inquire, sir.
Could be much more than 2 weeks.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
This conversation that you had with Miss Boone,
Yes.
that took place on the 24th? Is that correct?
Yes.
And who else was present on the time that the conversation was taking place?
Standing right next to me would have been Melissa Sexton and Eugene Harris, as well as the officer who was in front of the door.
Okay. So there was a law enforcement officer there that day, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, on the 24th is when you said that Miss Boone made this statement to you. Is that correct?
Yes.
They were playing hide and seek?
Yes.
And what else did she say happened?
She had told me they were playing hide and seek. They had drank. She was trying to teach him a lesson, and that was that. She went upstairs. She went to sleep. She woke up. She doesn't know what happened.
Okay. So that was on the 24th?
Yes.
All right. On the 26th, were you not interviewed by law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay.
I may have my days wrong, but it all happened on the same day.
All right, the 24th, do you remember 2 days later that a Detective Scott Lowen conducted an interview with you at 4704 Lucier Court, Winter Park, Florida? You remember that interview?
Yes.
So that was 2 days later, is that correct?
I would assume so.
Yes. All right, so.
It does seem a little bit nervous.
When he interviewed you 2 days later, did you tell him about this statement that Miss Boone made to you that you just told this jury in court?
I did mention it to him.
You did mention it to him?
I mentioned to them that we did have a conversation.
Did you tell him the content of the conversation?
I may not have told him the whole content, but I did tell him we had a conversation.
All right, well, what did you tell him? What content did you tell him on the 26th?
That they were playing hide and seek, that she was confused, she doesn't know what happened. I do believe I did mention to him the fact that she had said that she was trying to teach him a lesson. Not that anything was done with malice. I didn't state that at all.
So it's your recollection now today that on the 26th, you told Officer Lowen, what you just.
Now, what's quite interesting, again, just looking a little bit at body language. So he's just interesting to observe. He's shriveling in his chair. He seems to be the only witness so far that's really done that, and that's self-soothing. You've seen him just sort of wipe his nose like that. Face touching can also be, if you're nervous, a sign that you're not just a little bit nervous, that it's beyond a certain point. He's also doing that thing where he closes his eyes for a period of time. He's shutting out the person. He's also trying to calm himself by doing that. And so it certainly is quite interesting what we're seeing here.
This jury, is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. Sir.
So I've noticed three things: the self-soothing shriveling in the chair, the long closed blinks, and then face touching. Let's see how many of those repeat themselves. Another long
In
blink.
preparing for this case, did you have a meeting with the Assistant State Attorney on September 23rd of 2024?
Did I have a meeting?
Yes.
A brief chit chat over the phone.
A brief chit chat, it was over the phone?
Yes, sir.
Self-soothing.
At that point in time over the phone, did you tell him
Long blink. Long blink.
you tell him that Sarah Boone, the defendant, stated that she was teaching him a lesson and things
It seems to be kind of fidgeting.
got out of hand and that she fell asleep?
Yes.
Is that what you told him?
Yes.
Long blink.
And that was in 2024 of September the 23rd of this year, 2024. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you telling us that back on,
So there's another face touch. So did you see how quickly I've established like a pattern? I've never seen him before. And yeah, you've got a pattern of those three things.
February the 26th of 2020, you told Officer Lowen at that time the same thing?
Now, I would add to that the self-soothing of that sort of rocking motion he's doing. There's also a kind of maybe nervous, how can I put it now? What am I doing? Kind of a nervous, I don't know if the word is catharsis, but a nervous trying to deal with his nervousness.
As I recall, yes.
So did she ever tell you how things got out of hand?
No.
Sir, you testified that you knew both Mr. Torres and Miss Boone, is that correct?
Yes.
You actually knew George Torres from a different time, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
When did you first know George Torres?
In the 1990s.
In the 1990s?
He was a teenager and he lived down the street from me and my wife.
So you had had a previous relationship with Mr. Torres?
No, not at all.
Not at all. You just knew him from then?
Yes, as I stated, he was a teenager and I was an adult.
Okay. During this time, though, that you became reacquainted with him, did y'all establish a friendship at that time here in Orlando?
I wouldn't say a friendship, but an acquaintance, yes.
Can you see where this is going? So before it actually goes there, can we intuit, can we predict, can we anticipate what direction the defense are going to go into? And I would predict they want to undermine George Torres. They want to basically say he wasn't such a nice boyfriend. He's got some skeletons in his closet. He did X, Y, and Z. That's not the nicest, not legacy, but it's not really the nicest thing to have in your kind of repertoire. And isn't that going to be exposed to this particular individual? They want him to reveal an aspect to George Torres that makes him look bad and Sarah Boone, relative to him, look better, right? Do you agree?
Sir, on Monday, February the 24th, that would have been the day.
Okay, well, I didn't expect that. I thought they were going to deal with some specifics, and they didn't.
That you were with Miss Sexton and Gene Harris.
Yes,
Out in front of the apartment.
correct.
Did you talk to law enforcement that day?
No.
You did not talk to them that day?
I don't recall talking to him that day, no.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I don't have any.
Well, there goes that theory. I mean, that didn't happen, did it?
If I can confer.
You can, sir.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any further questions.
Any redirect examination?
Just brief.
All right, thank you.
Back in the 90s, when you had previously known George Torres in this case, where were you living at that time?
I lived across the street. I lived on one block, he lived the next block over down in the middle.
In what city?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And when did you move from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania?
2018.
So in the intervening years, from your move from Philadelphia to coming to work at Tealwood Park, did you have any contact with George Torres?
No, as a matter of fact, I moved from that particular block in 2005, so I don't meet Judge again until I work at Tealwoods.
When did you start working at Tealwoods?
2018, 2019, roughly there.
No further questions.
Can this witness be released?
No, Your Honor, just subject to recall.
All right, sir. You'll be released subject to recall. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That was kind of bizarre.
State, call your next witness.
State will call Deputy Kayla Rodriguez.
At last, we have an officer. I feel like I want to actually even apologize. I mean, it feels like they were going to deal with skeletons in closets and they never did. So I sort of feel that's a bit unfair to him because they didn't. So apologies for going down that track because maybe that's unfair. Okay, so this is Deputy, was it Krantz?
Good afternoon, ma'am. You could be seated. Please state your name and spell it for the record if you could for us.
Oh, Kayla.
Kayla Rodriguez. Kayla, Kayla. Rodriguez, Rodriguez.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cacciatore, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi,
Can you tell us did you work for?
Orange County Sheriff's Office,
And what is your position with the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
Deputy Sheriff.
And how long have you been a deputy sheriff?
Pretty lady.
A little over 8 years, since 2016.
And tell us, what are your duties as a deputy sheriff?
As a deputy, I respond to calls for service, anything from a over with call, like a car being keyed the day prior.
It's interesting that she's one of the few witnesses that's actually turned to the jury and addressed the jury.
Or a 911 emergency.
And what type of training do you need to be a deputy sheriff?
So for me, I obtained my bachelor's degree from UCF in criminal justice in 2014. After that, in 2016, I was hired by the sheriff's office. Right after being hired, I went straight into the academy. The academy is 5 months of training. We go over everything from case law.
Looks like there's a camera on her shoulder.
Scenarios, defensive tactics, physical training. After that, I do 2 more months with the sheriff's office where we go specifically into policy related to Orange County specifically. After that, I do 3 months on the road with a trainer where we are evaluated periodically through that process. You have a partner, you respond to calls for service during that time, and you slowly learn how to handle calls by yourself.
Do you also undergo continuing training as a condition of your employment?
Yes.
Tell us, were you working on February 24th, 2020?
Yes.
And tell us, what area of the county were you working in?
Orange County, unincorporated Orange County.
And did you receive a call in regards to this case?
Yes.
And what was that call? What information did you have at the time you received the call?
So the dispatcher informed me that a woman called 911. She was actively performing CPR and that her boyfriend was in a suitcase.
And did you respond out to the scene?
Yes.
And when you responded out to the scene, were you dressed similarly as you are dressed today?
Yes.
And just for the record, you have, it looks like a standard green uniform on with a tool belt, your firearm, and also radio, body-worn camera, badge.
Yes.
Camera's important.
Tell us about your body-worn camera.
So my body camera is used to capture scenes when we arrive. So as we are conducting any sort of law enforcement action, we turn our camera on.
When you turn your camera on, tell us, does it immediately capture sound at that point?
It does not. When we activate our camera, it goes back a minute. And the minute that it goes back to, you don't hear any audio for that first minute.
Tell us also about the capacity and the battery life of your camera as well.
So the battery will last us an entire shift typically if it's in a buffering mode. So if we're not recording, it will last the entire shift. As we record, it does drain the battery. So typically we will turn it off if we're sitting in our car for an extended period of time, if we call our supervisor, if we're talking to another deputy on the side away from a scene, we will not have the camera recording. If it recorded throughout the entire shift, the battery would die. We would need multiple batteries.
So you actually activate the camera in order to.
Correct.
Was your body camera operational on this call out?
Yes.
Good. This should be really interesting to see them on scene, Sarah and her ex, Brian. Wonder if they're going to play it now. You think they are going to play it? I think they are.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness, which has been previously marked for identification as states H, I, and G that have been shown to defense?
You may.
Do you recognize this?
Ma'am, I'm first showing you what's been marked for identification as states I. Do you recognize that disc?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to review that disc prior to coming to court today?
Yes.
And tell us, what is that disc?
Body worn camera from the.
So what you see behind there, something tells me this is in order to play something. Do you guys agree?
Day of the incident.
From February 24th, 2020?
Correct.
And is that your initials on the disc?
Yes.
And does that disc fairly and accurately represent the contents of your body-worn camera?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification as states I into evidence.
Any objections?
No objection.
All right, what was pre-marked as I will be received into evidence without objection as states 4.
Hi, Batman. Good to see you. Long time no see. Thanks for joining us.
Ma'am, next I'm showing you has been marked for identification as states H. Can you take a look at that disc? Tell us, what is that disc?
Body worn camera from the day of the incident.
From February 24th, 2020?
Yes.
And did you have an opportunity to review that disc prior to coming to court today?
Yes.
And is that your initials on the disc?
Yes.
And does that disc fairly and accurately represent the contents of that portion of your body worn camera from that day?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's been marked for identification as states H into evidence.
No objection to any of those coming in.
What was pre-marked as states H will be received without objection as states 5.
And lastly, ma'am, I'm showing you has been marked for identification as states G. Do you recognize this disc?
Yes.
And tell us, what is that disc?
Body worn camera from the day of the incident.
From February 24th, 2020?
Yes.
And you had an opportunity to review this camera prior to coming to court?
Yes.
And that's your initials on the disc?
Yes.
And it fairly and accurately represents your conduct on the body worn camera?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's been marked for identification as states G into evidence.
No objection.
Thank you. What was pre-marked as states G will be received without objection as state 6.
In Your Honor, request permission to publish states 4.
You may.
Your Honor, may we dim the lights and use the overhead projector?
Yeah, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna put this on full screen. I think you're right, Iceland. Not at this rate of turnover in terms of witnesses. Oh, there she is. Look at her hands clasped together.
Hello there. You live here? Okay, I'll talk to you guys, get some information. That's my, the property manager. Tell him really quick, or we'll take care of that. Where's he at? You want that? Oh, don't worry about that. We'll take care of that for you, okay? I had a cigarette, but okay, wait 1 second, okay? I really need something to drink. Okay, well,
Oh, did you hear what she said? I really need something to drink.
At the time, you called it. Yeah, time you called it, okay, perfect. Go ahead. 707 at 1307.
The fan is on.
What's going on?
Did you hear what she said? You can't go back
For
inside.
like 3.5 years. What happened? We drank last night. Can you pass this to the, around to the
Doesn't she look quite belligerent there? Just in that little clip.
No. You two then have to, this might be a real.
I think that was her ex-husband.
Then have to put your name.
Normally, I just put everybody.
What's going on? I just got here to fill me in.
No problem. Like, puzzle together, we can do some artwork right there.
You are putting a puzzle together?
Yes, we have a puzzle that we started in there.
Okay.
We've been doing art, trying to put stuff off the wall to make new art kind of there, like having a good time with one another. But we were drinking, we had a bottle of wine last night. So then it's like, we decided to play hide and seek, right?
Okay.
So he gets in the suitcase, okay? That's my assistant.
He gets in the suitcase.
He lives here with you guys?
No, I called him over here.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
So then he came over here. Here, let's talk in private, okay? I called you guys. The problem is I fell asleep. When did you do CPR? This morning. When I found it before you called.
This morning?
Yeah. 1 o'clock right now. I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30, whatever. So I came downstairs and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still. That's when I found him. I took him out and I tried doing CPR and then I called him and then I called you guys. Did he get here before the fire department got here? Who? Your husband or your ex-husband? Okay. Where did you live at? Right on the street. Okay. So you were playing and who did some updates? I did, but then I fell asleep.
Wow, okay.
You're okay. I wasn't here. I'm just trying to figure out what happened. Like having an aneurysm or a heart attack or what? What kind of medical condition? None that I know of. None that I know of. No. All we had was a bottle of wine. Literally, just a bottle of wine.
Just think about how emotional she's getting here and how emotionless she is in that actual video. If you've seen it, I have, and there's a big mismatch.
Okay. Doing puzzle artwork, then we decided to learn how to see. That's all that happened. Okay. But I was never I don't want it there, but I don't know what happened. So how long were you doing CPR on him prior to calling 911? You tried that all morning? Yes. Okay. And then I called him while I was in CPR. Did you start probably giving me a rough ballpark? Here, let me fill this back in, okay? Please, may I have my Dr. Pepper? I am still cutting out right now.
She wants a Dr. Pepper.
Ma'am, and you can't talk to him until we get down to paper, okay? Just don't leave, okay, Brian? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Thank you. I know. Do me a favor. Stand over there by that car. Give me 1 second.
Seems like she's thirsty.
There's document. Yeah. You want to clear the back bedrooms real quick? Just make sure there's nobody else in here. Nope, he was here with the girlfriend, and that's the girlfriend's ex-husband.
There's a dog over there.
They were playing hide and go. This is what she said. She's been doing CPR on him all morning before calling us. Yep. So I'm gonna go ahead and start making phone calls. Okay, go ahead. What do I do with this dog? Because I don't want him to mess with. Here, come here.
Good call.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
She's whistling for the dog.
Yes. Hey, come on, let's go outside. Come on.
Good boy.
Going upstairs, those are the stairs. With the neighbor heard something going down the stairs. The bedroom.
Orange County.
Yes, Right over here. Let me check this closet.
Does the bed look slept in? I suppose it does. Although no one got under the covers, right? Maybe they did. Another bedroom. Now, it's always difficult when you're confronted with a crime scene and you don't have a lot of time to like look at each thing with incredible detail. What do you focus on? So what you try and do is cover everything fairly quickly, which is also easy to overlook something. Going back downstairs. See, the stairs are right against the wall there. They usually are.
Set up a crime scene now.
That's being blurred out, I think, on purpose. That was the ex-husband.
Just give us a second, okay? It's on the camera. I can't move it. You can come out of the house. Here, let's get you down, because I don't want you passing out. This is probably a lot for you to deal with, right? Water. I can get you some water, okay? Just I want you not on your feet. I don't want you passing out.
It's about the third time she says she's thirsty.
Okay, I'll get
Fourth
some for
time.
you.
Hold on a second.
Request permission to publish states 5.
You may proceed.
Publish the next one. Was this a follow-up interview? I can't quite see the date at the top. 24.
Let's go ahead and start making the call. Ma'am, could you go ahead and give me his last name, Torres? Spell it for me. Torres. And his first name? George, Jorge. Jorge. O-R-G-E. His birthday? 2/13/78. And this is the boyfriend? Yes. How long? 3.5 years. Living together that whole time? Yes. Okay. And your last name? Boone. Spell it. B-O-O-N-E. First name? Sarah. S-A-R-A-H. Birthday? 10/10/77. So you had a second to kind of collect yourself. Tell it to me again. You guys were playing last night, drinking a bottle of wine, putting us together, doing artwork, puzzles, artwork. They had a bottle of wine, and they decided to play hide and seek. So what time was that? Do you remember? I mean, I know that I was dead.
So does she say anything here about he was shouting at her, she was afraid, any of that? Because that's part of the defense case. Does she say any of that here?
Probably by like what, 12:30? Okay, well, I went upstairs at least.
Does she say, I'm afraid, that he was angry, he was violent?
And I fell asleep, forgetting that he was in the suitcase.
Playing the hide and go.
Yes.
And at some point you put him in the suitcase?
No, he got in the suitcase. So he thought it would be funny to be put in the suitcase. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to joke with you and I'll zip you up and make him, squirm a little bit, whatever it is. But then I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
Where was the suitcase?
Right where it is.
Right down there?
Yes.
You zipped him in there?
Yes.
Thought it would be funny a little bit?
It was. We both were laughing about it.
Okay.
And then I fell asleep.
Where did you fall asleep at?
Upstairs.
We both were laughing about it. Does the video show them both laughing about it?
In your bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally forgetting that he was in the suitcase still.
Okay. And then you came back downstairs?
This morning, or this afternoon, yes, when I got up.
What time?
12:30-ish. I was awake, but I totally forgot that he was in the suitcase. He can tell you there's a lot of things that I/we can go jobs.
Yeah, he did tell me.
But all that good stuff. So I just totally forgot.
You began to do CPR on him?
Yes. Yes.
About
And he
what
gurgled.
time this morning did you start doing that CPR?
No, it was the afternoon. It was afternoon because I was awake. But then I finally decided to come downstairs at like 12:30-ish, whatever it is. And I was like, he wasn't moving, nothing was happening, so I unzipped it, took him out and started doing CPR on him. He was on his way over here. I called you when he got here.
Once he got here, you called us?
Yes.
Okay.
And air was coming out and he was gurgling, but.
Do you believe her? Do you believe that statement? At that stage, he must have been in the suitcase for 12 hours, 14 hours, I don't know. But do you believe that air was coming out because he was still alive? If he was purple, do you think he was still alive?
I could tell by looking at him.
You had to do CPR, you were doing that on your own?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the person that was on the phone with me also, I counted with him doing it.
And he's got no medical, he doesn't take any medication?
I don't know. I don't know medical wise. I know he doesn't take any medications whatsoever. The only thing, like I said, I don't know if alcohol had to do with it, but we had a bottle of wine.
Okay, all right. Here, I want you to sit back down because I don't want
Can I have one more sip of water? Yes, go on.
She wants another sip of water. She says, I don't know if alcohol had anything to do
I'll
with
do what
it.
I can to get you a cup because I don't want you to have to keep doing that.
She's very thirsty.
The cups are right there.
Right here, don't talk to the ex-husband right now.
I won't. Can I have a cigarette, please?
Ma'am, I can't take any of the house. It's on the back porch. Nope, all day, secure, okay? I'll try my best to get you what you need, okay? Maybe one of these days you'll have a pack from someone, you know, sit down and I'll try and get you what you need, okay? Just cut, please. Okay. I don't want you on your feet.
I wonder if they did a breathalyzer on her. If you think about it now, it would make sense to do that ASAP.
Yes, you put him out or something. He came back in? So there's no sense then?
Did they purposefully blurring it out because there's a...
Corporal, I can give you a rundown. She's, sitting on the curb at home. I was getting ready to call you guys. Yeah. Want to talk over here?
Your Honor, request permission to publish State 6.
You may do so.
So what do you think of her demeanor? Is she crying? Is she apologizing? Is she... Does she seem to show remorse? The one thing that comes close to that is she says, I fell asleep. Volume. Also the 24th. Officer in plain clothes. Isn't Casey Anthony working as a detective? Or working with law enforcement? Because we are in Orlando, Florida, right?
Hey, Sarah. You get enough water? No, you want to stay seated. I don't want you getting lightheaded. So remember I said the detectives were gonna come out and talk to you and go from there. You know what I'm saying? They're here. They're gonna ask you a few questions and then go from there, okay? All right.
All right, sir, my name is Chelsea, my partner Scott. It's my understanding you reside here? Okay, is it just you, okay. Your former husband, okay. But you reside here with George and then your son lives with you or lives, there's 50/50? Yeah. Okay. So from what, has told me, she explained, last night that you guys were drinking a bottle of wine, and around midnight, you decided, you guys. Okay. You guys decided to play hide and seek.
Well, we were playing hide and seek and then.
Was your son home at the time or, okay.
No, it was mine. It was fine.
Okay.
Decided to play, we just did it like that, like, sure. We were putting puzzles together, we were doing artwork. You can see the puzzle that we finished in there and then the artwork and then decided to play hide and seek, just being stupid.
Okay.
So he decided to get in the suitcase. So I thought it would be funny to, and he was talking about it too, to get him up in there. I go upstairs and fell asleep. So this morning when I woke up down here and I actually got up out of the bed, I thought sure he was downstairs on the laptop, really quiet. But then I came upstairs and I'm like, where is he? Like, and that's what I found.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Okay. And then you weren't sure about if you woke up this morning?
It was afternoon. I mean, I was
or this afternoon,
but I just didn't want to come downstairs. So
okay.
I just laid in bed for a little while, and then I eventually came downstairs. He was where he was, and then I was like, oh my God, he's in the suitcase still.
So I pulled him out and I stretched him out and I started to try to make CPR one. I helped you guys. So I called Brian. Okay. And then as soon as he got here, which is 30 seconds on the road, I called you guys. Okay. The person on the phone had me do the concussions continually, so I can count with him until you guys shut up.
Okay. And so as part of our investigation, we obviously have to go inside the house. We have to look at things. Are you okay with us going in the house and looking at things? Okay. And forensics, so we have to have our forensics crime scene investigators come out. Are you also okay with them coming inside, taking photographs and? Okay. Okay.
Can I ask, is Brian, George, was he diagnosed with any kind of mental history?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't take drugs. I mean, we'll have these people model of wine here and there, but I don't know.
Well, that would be my next question. So you guys don't normally drink? You just drink once in a while, or?
Well, I'm gonna say okay, I guess normal drinking is we will have a glass of wine or two, like while we're cooking dinner, church here, and we'll say I'm working with him, we'll be from there. But it's not a
couple of beers a day.
I don't understand though, for the little bit that we had, not having. I don't know if they had a heart attack or a stroke or what happened. I don't know.
So were you guys together all day yesterday? Okay. Here?
Yes.
Neither of you left the apartment yesterday?
I drove up to the before to get cigarettes.
Okay.
But I mean, you can walk there.
This guy, no, he doesn't now. He said he doesn't.
I don't know.
As far as you've ever known him, you've never seen him.
No. I mean, he's from Philadelphia and he grew up in Philadelphia and then he went to Massachusetts and then from Massachusetts he came down here. So I don't really know a whole lot of medical history or.
How long have you guys been together?
Almost 4 years, 3.5 years.
You guys been living here the whole time?
Yes.
Have you never been to the doctor or to the hospital during that time?
He and his brother got into a really bad argument at one point and had facial reconstruction. But he has been in the hospital from that, and then I talked him into going to see a regular physician.
It's interesting that she brings this up in the middle of, he's just died. Oh no, him and his brother had a big argument.
It's like a regular checkup thing, but there were no red flags.
How long ago was that?
The surgery or the doctor? The surgery, I think, was at this point, 2 years maybe, 2.5 years. The checkup was probably a year.
She's very matter of fact, right? No, she's not crying. She's not sorry. She's not. I mean, this is supposed to be her boyfriend that she'd been living with for 3.5 years. I mean, if you think about it, did she want to break up with him? Is she sad that he's gone?
2 years.
Okay.
And the suitcase is still in there?
I'll let you.
Is it normally stored down there, or did you guys travel recently?
No, he was going to start picking some donation in there, so that's why
it's out.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys
That doesn't make any
travel
sense.
somewhere and go after.
After you zipped them up, did you move the bag around and mess them all, or you just zipped it up and walked away
we're
after?
laughing about it, but I went upstairs and I fell asleep.
But what position was he in when you went in? Was he sitting on his rear end and his head up and he just kind of
No,
over?
okay, so this is the suitcase. This is his head and then he's right here and his feet were down.
So he was laying on his side?
Yes. Yes.
You just closed the flap and zipped it around?
Yes.
Okay.
I was not cleaning.
I understand this, okay.
So he said that I needed to tell you guys about his family. Who do I talk to about?
We're gonna do that once we walk through and see. Yeah, we're gonna.
I'm just telling you,
It's gonna be a
I'm
while.
afraid for my life. I want you to know that. I am afraid for my life. His family.
Well, she's saying, I'm afraid for my life.
Have never liked it. I'm the blue-eyed white devil.
what they told me. So they never liked me, they never take me in.
So is she afraid? Is she saying she was afraid of him, of George? Is she saying that George shouted at me? She's saying that they laughed, that it was a joke. Where's the duress? Now she's saying she's afraid of his family. But in terms of the actual incident, as she thus far, and bear in mind how much time she's had to talk to the officers, does she look like she's scared? Does she look like she's been beaten up? Does she look like she's been crying? Does she look nervous? But next to that, has she said anything? Has she made a single comment that I was afraid of George, that he was shouting at me, that anything like that? Because that's the defense case here. Is there anything in this body cam that supports the defense case so far in terms of that?
They've never accepted me, I'll put it that way.
Have you called any of them?
We talked to his daughter just today.
No, I mean, like, about this. So
No.
Okay.
That's
So
what
no one's gonna know until we will be making that notification, so
they're going to
it's,
tell me.
okay, well,
They live local?
Yes, they're down the road. They're going to tell me. His kids are going to tell me in Philadelphia. They're going to tell me. This was not intentional.
okay.
They're not going to understand that. They're not going to accept it.
We're gonna do a thorough investigation and we will definitely make sure that.
She's very aware at this point that it does come down to intentional, and she's saying it wasn't intentional.
You don't feel scared when we need to, okay?
And my 9-year-old.
Well, he's at school and he's with your husband.
I know, well,
Ex-husband.
Your husband said that, or your ex-husband said he made arrangements for your 9-year-old to be picked up.
Oh, okay, Mom.
All right, we're going to go aside if that's okay.
Yes, please, but can you say it? So I know what's going on.
Yes, ma'am.
And don't.
All you have to do is get their attention if you have a question, you need to talk to us. He's standing right there, she'll be right here.
Yeah, okay, but will you guys tell me, like, so you're telling me, like, you won't call whoever it is without telling me, right? I mean, I have all their phone.
We're not calling, we're not making phone calls, we're actually gonna speak to them in person. We
That'll be
are.
later
They're
on.
going, okay.
It'll be later.
Prior to us making the
I'm
call.
not gonna be here. They're going to tell me.
Okay.
We'll address all
They're
of
going
that,
to
okay, before we.
kill me, not tell me.
This was.
Okay. Okay.
Some other neighbors coming out.
Just stay seated, okay, sir? I know you're panicking, okay? Just relax. We'll come and talk to you. We'll keep checking on you.
And that's the end of the video. Okay, guys, I'm going to end this live stream. It's past the 3-hour mark. I think we have learned a few things today, especially through the
While you
body
were at the
cam.
scene, did you also make contact with Brian Boone?
Yes,
Did you take a statement from him as well?
I did.
Were all your interactions with the defendant on that day captured on your body worn camera?
Yes.
I have no additional questions at this time.
Wow.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Wow, that's interesting.
Questions, Judge?
Is this witness released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Don't you get the feeling this case is
You're
pretty
released, not subject to recall, ma'am. Thank
self-explanatory
you.
at this point? It pretends to have
Can I raise
nuance,
approach
it
for a
doesn't
moment?
really. Okay, so yeah, we are on an adjournment, but I'm going to end the live stream. I've been on for over 3 hours. It's quite late. It's 9:45 at night, and I'm pretty hungry, so I'm gonna get something to eat. Thanks a lot for joining me, and I guess I'll see you guys again on Monday for day 2 of Sarah Boone. I'll also try and update you guys on what came out today in the Delphi trial, remember that's not being live streamed. We will be getting the information in a staggered way at the end of each day. So I'll be trying to keep on top of that as well. We've got two pretty big cases going on at the same time. I've got a feeling this case is going to wrap up pretty quickly. Yeah, so we'll see. I'm pretty interested to see Sarah Boone herself testify. That should be quite interesting. Thanks to Fly on the Wall for the super chat of the day. Appreciate that. Also, thanks very much to Chelsea for moderating. Everyone is really well behaved except for, I think there were 2 people that I kicked off. So thanks everyone for being here. Just want to see Iceland as well. Thank you also for being here. You guys must have a wonderful afternoon and evening, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.